What is up, everybody? It is Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I'm also a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. And as always, this is the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. And we like to say thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule to hang out with us this evening. Always like to have new friends on the Dr. Vibe show. And this gentleman, I read this article and I could relate to it so much. And especially in these days where masculinity is a hot topic and men's emotions and behaviors are such a hot topic and a relevant topic, he is on point. He's the right person at the right time. Andy Grant is a best-selling author, speaker, transformational energy coach, Akashic. Did I get it right?
Akashic.
Akashic. I got it wrong. Akashic. It was so easy. Akashic. That's so easy. Records reader, and is the founder of Real Men Feel, a movement encouraging men to come out of the emotional closet. I like that. I like that. You gotta TM that. Come out of the emotional closet. I like that. As a survivor of multiple suicide attempts, Andy knows how we as human beings can feel, and he's committed to helping people realize how magnificent life is meant to be. He, like myself, was a weekly contributor to the Good Men Project. But tonight he's here to share about himself and an outstanding article that he has written called The Invisibility of Men's Tears. So welcome to the Dr. Vibe show for the first time and not the last time, Andy Grant. How you doing, Andy?
Very good, very good. I usually am not a fan of seeing the doctor, but I'm very excited to visit Dr. Vibe.
Well, you know what? Here's something that probably, again, this is a fact that probably many men don't do. I visit my doctor every 3 months.
Wow.
Every 3 months.
Good. You have health care.
Yes, yes, that is a yes. Yes, you are based in the U.S. and I'm based in Canada. So yes, that is true. And even more ironic, my dad is still alive. My dad and I have the same doctor.
Oh wow.
So that's probably a rare event in many men's lives, past, present, and future. So, hey, it ain't about me tonight. It's about you. So, but hey, you asked the question, I answered it. So that's what I'm here for. Like we like to do for the first time when people come on, new friends come on. Can you share a little background about yourself?
Sure. What you said, I'm a transformational energy coach, Akashic record reader, and all this kind of spiritual, kind of woo-woo stuff. And I found all that because I was a very miserable person before that. So all the tools I use to help others are tools that literally saved my own life. I grew up in Leominster, Massachusetts. My parents divorced when I was about 5 years old. Even at age 6, I had no memories of them being together. My dad was an alcoholic. This was in the early 70s. None of my friends had parents that were divorced. So I felt very much like an outsider. We moved around a lot in my first 6 years of living different town almost every year. And I had a really negative outlook on life. I felt sad and depressed, but didn't know that's what it was. That's what I thought life felt like. Again, from an age of 7 and 8 years old. I can remember having suicidal thoughts in the 4th grade. I first attempted suicide when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
I made multiple attempts through my teens and early 20s. And then finally I realized, there's got to be a better way to navigate life. I would end up getting help. After I tried to harm myself, I would get help and I would feel better. And I realized, well, maybe I could just skip the suicide attempt and just ask for help. And I was 24 years old before I had that realization. But it was discovering through trial and error, and again through these attempts to end my life, that maybe I'm supposed to be alive. Maybe there's a point to this. And so it was wanting to heal myself, find a purpose in all my pain that led me to go public, to make videos on YouTube, to come out and just say, yeah, I'm a survivor of suicide attempts. I've questioned, am I even a man? Right? I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm lonely, I'm not a human being, I'm not a man, I'm weak, I'm just flawed. And it was discovering none of that is true, and all the tools that help me get to that point are what I now focus on to help other men and women discover again that life is magnificent.
Excellent.
We truly are blessed more than we ever realize. Even people that realize they're blessed, the blessing is bigger than they realize.
Absolutely. Let me ask, and I want to have you share about your younger days. Like, how did you overcome the parents being divorced at a young age? Because it sounded like what you shared with me, you were the only young person in the group whose parents were divorced.
Yeah, so I was an only child.
Yeah, and that's tough.
Yep, I was an only child. My parents divorced, and it was bad. Like, my dad would come with police and lawyers, and it was not a cordial divorce at all. They fought for custody over me. And at the same time, I had a next-door neighbor that molested me.
Wow.
I didn't tell anyone about it because I didn't want to make waves. I was afraid that I would be the next man to be kicked out of my home. And these weren't conscious thoughts at the time. It was only in retrospect. Oh, I just knew I was afraid. I kept the secret. I thought I'd be in trouble. So I was a very closed down kid. I was very quiet, introspective. And again, I just had this very pessimistic outlook on life.
But so how did you get through those years? Because did you have any friends? You said you were sound like you were very into yourself. How did you continue to survive? Because it's a very tough period at that age, being an only child, being only boy child.
Yeah, it was. I had, one, maybe two at most at a time, close friends. I would have recurring nightmares. It was rough. How did I survive? Yeah, I just kept going. I thought it would get better. So one thing I learned from my dad, he always said, high school is the best years of your life. And I thought, well, things really stink right now. I'm not enjoying, being 8, 9, and 10 years old. Maybe high school will be better. So that's when I started to have this plan that, well, I'll live till I'm 18 and then I'll kill myself. But then things still got tougher, and I made attempts even before I got to 18. But again, it wasn't, as a child looking up and hearing my dad say high school's the best years of your life, it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized, well, he was 20 years old telling me that. So he didn't have much to beyond high school to talk about.
Absolutely.
And my parents met in high school. My mom got pregnant while she was in college. She dropped out of school. My dad went to school full-time, worked 2 full-time jobs to try to make this all work. But it was chaotic. It was a financial struggle. Again, we were moving every 6 months. And then finally they broke up. They couldn't take all that stress. And again, it was very bitter. I used to think I was being rented because I would take the alimony check back and forth, and my dad couldn't see me if he didn't have the check ahead of the visit. So I just thought I was a rent-a-kid. So it was just a thoroughly confusing experience. And there was no one to share that with.
So during that time, being a young boy, were there any positive influence? Did your parents at that young age have any impacts on you, positive or negative, as a young man that you learned from? Because obviously you watch how relationships can go bad, but did they leave you with any positive impacts?
Sure. I knew and felt that I was unconditionally loved by both my parents. They just couldn't stand each other, right? So I don't think I took that personally. I'm sure, like every child, at some point you think it's my fault, my parents split up or something. But that's not something that really consciously weighed on me. But I knew I was loved. I knew they both loved me, and they were both fighting. They were fighting each other both to keep me. Everybody wanted custody, and there were court battles and lawyers and police, and it was much uglier than it needed to be. So it's been a challenge. I've been married 20 years now, and when I first got married, I thought, well, now what? The only thing left is a divorce.
Right.
I had no experience of a marriage lasting a long time.
Right. Right.
So that was tough. But
wow.
I'm sure there are more positives than I'm realizing too, and I don't want to make it sound like I lived in some hellhole. Like I knew I was loved, but I also didn't feel safe enough in sharing how bad I felt.
First of all, congratulations on the 20 years of marriage. Fantastic. When did things start to turn around for you? Were there any sort of events? Because whenever I have friends come on and share stories of overcoming, I always like to know, were there any series of events, or was there some things that happened to make you start doing a turn?
Yeah, I was never, my depression, I was generally pessimistic. My worldview was life sucks, then you die. And if life is really sucking, why wait till die later? And so, but there were times of fun. I did very well in school, which brought some good feelings, but also some, being picked on for being smart. And I learned to dumb myself down, and I would get straight A's and screw up the curve in a class to help everyone else, their C's become B's because I was too smart for the class. I learned to dim myself. And again, it was really, my senior year in high school, I made, what I hate to compare them, but I'll call it my most serious attempt. I ended up unconscious in an ER. I think it was unconscious for about 24 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And when I came to, I was pissed. Some people try to kill themselves and they live through it and oh, thank God. And that was the scare they needed. And I needed multiple scares. I was really upset. And then the longer I was alive, I'm like, oh, now when school's going to know this? No, oh man, now my life is even worse. Before I'd attempted to end it. But I'm pleasantly surprised. No one ever picked on me, called me. No one ever came at me for trying to kill myself. People kind of walked around on eggshells and didn't know what to say to me, but no one came out and, hey, mental case, welcome back to school, or anything like that.
Right.
So I kept discovering slowly, and it took a long time for me to accept it, that my own resilience.
Right.
And the little voice that kept me alive, that, I'm just going to slam my car into the side of this warehouse. I'm doing it. I swear to God, I'm going to do it. And the voice and the impulse that made me turn away, I used to think that was weakness, but I finally discovered and accepted that was my strength. Wonderful.
Fantastic. During this time, were your parents providing any support?
Yeah, I was seeing counts. So the first time that I tried to kill myself when I was 13, I tried to overdose on some just in-home, over-the-counter pills and such. And I believed it was going to kill me. It didn't. It just made me sick. And I'm in tears, and I'm telling my mom what I had done. And we were both so scared, we wanted to pretend it didn't happen. The next day, I stayed home from school. And my mom taught school. She went to work. We didn't want to believe that I felt this bad, so we helped each other kind of put it into some denial. So, of course, nothing really improved. And, within a year or two, I was then seeing a child psychiatrist. But, I didn't want to feel better. I didn't think I could be helped. So I just played the game. I tell doctors what they wanted to hear. I'd give them some stories. But I wasn't willing to heal until, I was in my 20s.
Wow. Wow. That's phenomenal story, man. Well, we have to have, well, that's a whole conversation in itself. And we're here to focus on your great article. Lead us to the journey that got you into coaching. How did that come about?
So years and years of therapy, counselors and psychiatrists and medications did not have the positive effect I had hoped for on myself. So I was looking at alternatives. And one thing, led to another, and I was on an internet call with someone talking about energy. And they walked us through what they called the meditation, but it was really calling forth an energy and feeling it course through you. And I felt light fill me up, and I felt energy pour out of my hands, and I was like, what is this? This is amazing. I want more of this. And that gentleman that led that, his name was David Morelli, and I followed him for a couple of years until he finally opened up a program and taught how to coach via energy. So I was learned to read energy and train and see the people and help move through it. But again, I did it for myself. The first 6 months of the year-long program was working on yourself to heal yourself, because I can't be this broken, flawed, disgruntled person that thinks life sucks and help anybody. I had to realize, personally have the experience of how magnificent life is, of how powerful each and every one of us are, before I could possibly coach people.
Right.
So it wasn't until the tail end of that program that I was like, I might do this. And everyone around me was like, well, of course you are. We knew that since day one. But it took me to grasp that I could help people, that I was good at helping people, that these tools worked for anybody. So that was 2010.
Right.
But I found so much of coaching, how anyone can help someone is being open, being authentic. The more, and it's scary, I get that it's scary, but the more I openly share myself, I've gotten nothing but blessings back.
Wonderful.
I've gotten nothing but support. Right?
Wonderful. That's great. When you started your coaching, was it, were you looking to coach men specifically, or did that come along the way?
That came along the way. The vast majority of my clientele for years and years have been women. And the events and functions I went to for personal growth, for spirituality, for meditation, I was one of a few men.
Right.
And so that's when that's really what dawned and created what I call Real Men Feel. I was invited to speak about masculinity about 3 years ago now.
Right.
And because all the women assumed I had a lot of male clients. And when I would tell them, no, I don't. They go, oh, my husband needs you, and oh, my boyfriend needs you. I'm like, well, they need to realize that. You telling them that they need me, they're not going to act on that. So Real Men Feel really began to make a space, naming men, calling them so they knew, oh, I'm welcome here, right? And I'm allowed to feel. And the most common thing we say in the Real Men Feel show is reminding men that they're human beings before they're male beings. And all human beings have the right and expectation and privilege of experiencing and expressing all of our emotions. That there aren't some emotions that are for women and some are for men, though that's what many men are taught. And not knowing how to share my emotions as a child caused years and years of pain unnecessarily. Right? If I felt comfortable crying as a child or as a teenager, I would have released so many demons. If I was seeing a counselor and a therapist or a guidance counselor, and instead of feeling myself on the verge of tears and just shutting it down and making up some story or saying everything's fine, if I had let it continue to flow, I would have received help much quicker and easier than I had.
Right. In starting your coaching, coaching with men, was it an easy climb up the hill? When it came, and I coach men too, so I always like to get the perspective of men that coach men. How was the start of that journey?
Yeah, it's easier almost every day. More men are seeking to better themselves than 10 years ago, and 10 years before that, 10 years before that. And also, some of the energy tools and the spiritual practices that I'll talk about and blog about and have videos about, more men get it now too.
Why do you think that?
Because the one constant in our life is change. And the pace of change is accelerating faster and faster and faster. And if you're going to fight not to grow in the face of all this change, that brings a lot of pain. So more and more men are going, I think there's another choice besides this pain and resistance. I'm going to try to go with the flow. I'm going to try to expand and realize I'm more than just this meat suit. I'm more than just a guy fighting to get a paycheck. That I'm more than just drinking beers and watching sports. There's more to life than I have allowed myself to experience.
Nice. Well, let's get into the article, The Invisibility of Men's Tears. A lot of shares on the Good Men Project. What gave you cause to write this article at this part of your manhood journey?
Well, last year, 2017, was the roughest year I've had in quite a while. I hit financial difficulties. I had business difficulties. I thought I was going to lose my house. My dad was battling cancer and dementia, and he passed away in July.
My condolences, by the way.
Thank you very much. But there were a lot of tears. I was sobbing a lot during this whole time. And one of these times, I was at my chiropractor, who'd known me for years, who knew I had a history of suicide and depression, that I worked with men's groups and did spiritual things. And I was just sitting in the room alone, waiting for him to come in and put me on the table. And I just started crying. I was days away from what I believed to selling my home, moving in with my dying dad for however many months he had left. And, you know, I'm taught, and I'm trying to accept what is, and everything will develop for the good. But every choice I had, I didn't like any of them. And I had to really consciously choose not to backslide into, well, my old out is just killing myself. If I don't like any options, I'll take my ball and go home. Right? So I'm consciously working at not allowing that path to happen, not that false illusion that's easy, because it's not easy. So I just start sobbing. And I'm not talking, you know, the Indian with one tear because he sees litter kind of cry. I'm sobbing. Yeah. I am bawling. Snot is running down my face. The doctor comes in, and his jaw just drops. He has no idea what to do or say. And he just stuttered, and I'm like, yep, don't worry about it. And I get him the table. And he's adjusting it, and I don't recall him saying a word. So I get up, I leave. I check in, and I pay my copay to the receptionist, and she, again, jaw dropped, eyes wide open, just not knowing, having any idea what to say. So they both just let me drive away sobbing. That was, I think, in April. I didn't see them again until November of 2017. So I go in, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? He's like, well, it's good to see you, in a good mood. Hey, and he's giving me a hug, and it just, as I'm getting the best greeting I've ever had at the chiropractor's office. Wow. Because they obviously remembered the last time I was there. Right. But now, again, instead of being invisible, no one knows how to react to a man in tears. Now they could even release how they felt all this time. Again, they were so relieved to see me, so glad to see me, so glad that things are turning out and I'm in a better space. And I'm leaving. I'm making another appointment. The receptionist says, wow, it's been a long time since you've been in here. I said, yeah. And I think last time I was here crying. She's like, oh, yes, you were. Oh, and I felt like, you know, as if I forgot. But me bringing it up allowed them to speak more of it. Wow. So she was saying, oh, you were crying, and I felt so bad for you. I was so worried about you. And I thought in my head, yet you didn't say a thing.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, in the moment, they were quiet. And I'm, you know, nothing against your medical help there, but I'm going, why didn't they call the next day to see if you're okay? Or, but we'll expand on that because I think that's a general thought process. But continue on. Sorry for interrupting.
No, and that was really it. But she was just saying, I felt so bad for you, and I was so worried and so concerned. Her last thing just kept saying, I felt so bad. And, you know, I'm thinking, well, I wanted to tell her there was no need to, you know, that doesn't help me, but, you know, I didn't want to discount her feelings either. Right. So I just said, you know, thank you, and left, and that was it. And, you know, I've really been celebrating by the end of the year. By November, I was like, it's been 2 weeks that I've been feeling fantastic. You know, oh, now it's been a month that I've been feeling fantastic. So again, I have this judgment of myself because I have spoken about my suicide attempts, because I've written books about how to thrive in life after failing at suicide attempts, that I should be done with that. I should never feel like that way again. And when I talk to people, I remind them that once that thought's ever been in your head as a realistic option for you, it's always there. It just gets quieter. It just services less and less. But it just, I'm sure I'll feel that way again at some point in the rest of my life. Right. But what I know now more than ever is that I don't need to go through that alone. The sooner I open up about it, the quicker it's released. Right. It's not falling back into those old ways of, I'm a guy, I've got to get through this. Nope, I'm an expert at feeling like crap. I can do this on my own. And that's just a fallacy.
number of conversation pieces I want to bring up with you on this. First, one of the first things that comes up in my head, did you ever, or have you ever seen your dad cry?
So my dad was diagnosed bipolar.
Right.
And so I was diagnosed bipolar before any doctor ever spoke to me. So I've seen my dad horribly, horribly upset.
Right.
But again, and some of the earliest memories I have of being a human being are being in the waiting room, hearing my dad scream while he's getting shock therapy.
Wow.
So what I took was, yeah, my dad can cry, and he gets punished for it.
Wow.
Right. Wow. So again, it was ingrained that, oh, a man crying, that's a sign of illness. That's a sign that something's wrong.
Wow.
So yeah, it was weird. I didn't.
What? Yeah, and thank you for being so transparent. I appreciate it, and our audience doesn't take it for granted. When you are sharing these stories, especially with men, what is their reaction?
Usually, guys wait till whatever the group, the event, whatever has disbanded, then they'll come up to me privately. I know exactly how you feel. Or, that's happened to me. I've tried to kill myself. My dad died by suicide. I get all the confessions after the fact when they feel safe.
What do you feel, and I experience this also, what do you feel is that barrier for not saying it in the open, or not showing the crying in the open? Because it's gone on for hundreds of years.
I think it's judgment. It's a fear of being judged as being weak. You're not a man. Oh, look at that, crying like a little girl. Right? All these derogatory ways that have been used to refer to men who cry.
What do you feel are some of the factors in today's society that are keeping that, let's call it a stereotype? What keeps on reinforcing that stereotype? Keeps reinforcing that thought process, that emotional process?
Well, the United States currently has a president that makes fun of people who show emotion, calling other senators crybabies and things like that. So that doesn't help. But outside of that, I actually see things breaking down more. I do see and experience in public and in my social circles more men willing to feel, right, and glad to finally feel. And the Good Men Project, the Mankind Project, yep. just local men's groups, all these different avenues that again, from what I see, keep getting bigger and bigger. So the momentum is there for a real men's movement that can own and accept masculine power without wielding it just as some destructive force, right? That modern masculinity is, again, open to all of your emotions. A true man isn't just allowed to be angry and fight. Like, fight is not an emotion.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the phrases or two of the phrases I say a lot is, there's a lot of men that are screaming and nothing's coming out.
Yeah. And
that one of the easiest emotions for a number of men is anger. And
that's allowed.
It's allowed. It's permitted.
Right.
It's permitted. Go ahead.
I find what keeps guys from going beyond anger is their own fear. Fear of being judged, being labeled, perceiving themselves, having family members, society judge them as weak, broken, flawed, a sissy, a wimp, you're a little girl, all of these terms. And that's why real men feel when I first said that out loud, like, oh, that's it. Like, what if we lived in a society where a real man was someone that everyone recognized was willing to feel? I've spoken to military groups with some brave, courageous dudes that have done things I could never do. But for them to cry in public, they would rather be at the firing squad. Like, that is just so they would see me speaking on stage, choking up, telling my story, and come tell me, wow, you're the bravest man I've ever met. And I'm like, well, you just survived 3 years in battle. You're a pretty brave dude. So I love that today all these different types of men can see courage in others for lots of different things.
Wonderful, wonderful. with what are some of the reasons you're seeing men cry? What is causing them to cry? Because obviously there's been things pent up for many years, and you deal with a lot of men, so do I. Because I think our audience may need to know what's going on inside of these men that they're holding back, that are making them now start to cry.
I find the mask that so many men have worn is that everything's fine, got it all together, right? Life is easy, or at least I can make it seem easy, right? It's the picket fence, the good job, and all the exterior things that look fine, but inside they are rotting, right? It's just that the emptiness, the quest for meaning that doesn't get fulfilled by stuff. It's relationships that end often over and over again, and men find themselves alone and not knowing why. And there's a level of, I'll call it mourning, for so many things in the past that men were never allowed to fully feel, to process, to express. And it's going to show up. Like, every pain you feel is going to be expressed. But when you put a cork in your emotions, it's going to come out sideways. It's going to come out at times that's not the best of times. It's going to come out in dysfunctional ways. You know, road rage, abusive behavior, addictive behavior, just so many ways. But so your emotions do get expressed. But if you don't take control and ownership and express them in healthy ways, they will come at you and destroy you.
With some of the men you've dealt with, have they ever cried saying that they have no friends?
I have heard that.
Or they feel lonely.
Yeah, that's it. So and it's like I lead a local men's group. We get together once a month. And each man that comes in would say, there's no one I can talk about this to. And I'm like, well, look around the room. That's an old story. You have to change now. I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. But I've also kept realizing so many guys, it's a fear. It's an assumption. I can't tell my buddy this. Or I can't hug my best friend and tell him I love him. Right? I can't admit to my wife, my girlfriend, my kids that I'm afraid of the future, that I'm worried about my job, that I'm not sure where the next mortgage payment's going to come from. Because they all got to keep up the act that the man of the house has everything under control. Yet, more and more women that I talk to say they're so attracted to a man who's open and authentic and will tell them how they feel. So I think it's guys living enough of a life where they're corked, and it's that internal discomfort is telling you that this is not the way to navigate your life. So there's more freedom, there's more permission to try something different.
You'd mentioned your wife earlier. How integral has she been in a transformation, for lack of a better word, of your transformation of emotions from crying to being open? How transformational has she been for you?
Essential.
I like that word even better. Beautiful.
When we first got together, we were engaged, and I really said, it's like, I've got to warn you, like, I get really depressed. I've tried to kill myself. You got to know what you're getting into. I don't know if that's ever going to show up again. And I quit a job. I moved in with her, and we were planning a marriage. And yep, they're like, as I predicted, because I was focused on it. I was depressed. I was terrified. Calling my last psychiatrist, who was the first one I actually liked. He's now 4 hours away. Like, what do I do? He's like, well, you've changed everything in your life. Change is scary. You're feeling that. So let yourself feel it. So again, I was brought up, my self-teaching, seeing adults navigate around me and see them take pills and go into hospitals, I thought anytime I cried meant I was depressed and suicidal. I think I was 30 years old before I realized tears of joy were a real thing. I was in my 30s definitely before I could really look at a sunset and go, wow, that's beautiful. I never got that before, right?
How special of a partner you have that's been willing to accept you the way you are.
Yeah, and I've tried to push her away.
Right.
Again, when I'm feeling down, the part of me, the small part of me that thinks about the easy way out, about dying is the way to end this. Well, having some a person in my life that loves me unconditionally, wants me to stick around, isn't scared off by this, I've tried to chase her away. I've tried to insist her, no, I'm better off. You don't belong here. This is what's killing. And I know it. I know I'm saying it, and I know it's a lie. And she could see that it was a lie too. So she would never fall for that.
And I just think that how many men that you and I deal with who cry who don't have that.
Do they not have it, or do they assume they don't have it?
That's a very good point. I think some of them may not have it, but I think some of them assume they don't have it, and it's right in front of them beyond the glimpse of the obvious.
Yeah, that's what I find. Yeah. Again, it's just guys build the walls before they're needed. To prevent you from walling me in, I'll build the wall first. Right? You're not going to constrain me. I'll constrain me. I'll show you who's in charge. I'll make this tight little shell around me to prove that I have the power. Right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't help.
It doesn't. And I like to say this, and it's my platform. It's not easy being a man. It's not getting any easier being a man.
It's easier if you decide to be a human.
Just expand on that.
Being a man is what has all these societal trappings and teachings, and what does it mean? Well, it depends where you grew up and who you listened to and what you were taught. But being a human, well, there's just, I find there's just more built-in flexibility to being a human. I've never been to being a human training, but a lot of people have told me this is what it means to be a man, and most of it's been wrong for me.
So if you can, make some differentiations between man and human.
All right. Well, I know with you as a writer on the Good Men Project that you've heard of the man box.
Yep.
Right. So usually being a man comes with some rigid constraints of what that means. The how you dress, how you look, how you speak, how you treat others, what emotions you feel, how you express yourself, what you're allowed to do. Being a man usually doesn't include ballet classes.
Nope.
Being a man, there's lots of things it doesn't include. But being a human, again, it's the whole full range of humanity. You can. It's easier to look at anyone and go, oh yeah, that's a human. I reckon, yep, that's a human. Oh yeah, that's human. But when you start going, oh, that's a man. Oh, that one's a man. You start eliminating some males and only identifying some as men based on your largely unconscious version of the man box.
True. True.
So that's what I mean. So I always, when I lead groups of men, I always invite people to challenge what being a man means. And if you can recognize who taught you what it means to be a man, and were they a happy person to begin with? Why follow the training of someone who was miserable? Right?
And you bring up a really good point there, because I don't know if a lot of men, especially men who have kids, or even if you don't have kids, you are going to be influential to somebody whether you know it or not.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think it's a good thing if a man cries in front of his son, his daughter? Is there an appropriate element of doing that?
I believe there is, because when I ask guys, did you ever see your dad cry? And they'll talk about, oh, the one time, oh, the two times, or the never times. If it was more natural, if your dad cried opening a Father's Day gift, wouldn't you feel special as a kid seeing that? If you saw your parents embrace in so much joy, if your dad had a tear in his eye seeing you perform in the school play, right? There's a positive energy to those tears, right? Most men, again, like I thought, tears mean you're depressed, you're sad, everything's horrible. But no, there are tears of joy. There have been scientific studies looking under a microscope at tears. And the composition of tears from joy, from laughter, from sickness, from sadness and grief are all different. Men need to cry. Right? It's like changing the oil in your car.
True.
Allowing those tears to lubricate yourself.
Nice. Nice. Do you see the thoughts on this subject? Do you see a difference with men who are in their 20s and early 30s compared to men in their 50s and their 60s?
Yeah, and even wider. So I'm really impressed with the younger generation. I keep seeing guys at younger and younger ages open to just blowing the lid off the man box by challenging definitions, by being willing to do and to try and to fail and to succeed. It just they're just more willing to experiment. And I tell everyone about that. Don't believe anything I say. Trust your experience. But if you've been experiencing things in a really disappointing way, well, then hopefully something I say intrigues you enough to try something else. But I've met guys in their 70s and 80s still stuck on things from the Vietnam War, horrible things that they still have never spoken of, and it's still draining them, and their throats are incredibly clenched, and their wives, 50 years of marriage, and there are things they've never said to their wives, and that unsaidness is all this weight and energy and unreleased emotion that is just it's crippling. So every decade of growth in an individual is a little different, but what I see is that a 20-year-old can be at the place of where maybe a 45-year-old man in my generation was. A 20-year-old can be open enough without having a midlife crisis. Right? They're willing to try and experiment and have new experiences.
Mm-hmm. How has coaching changed with men for you over your journey?
The thing I learn over and over is not to hold anything back. Last year, when I was turning clients away because I was like, I'm a mess right now. I can't help you. And I probably could, but I wasn't willing to try, or I didn't want to risk letting someone down. But people persisted, and it was almost I was playing hard to get. So that made me saying no to some people made more people try harder to work with me. But I also, one of the best things that helped me get through everything was I did a couple solo shows where I just fired up my camera and did a real men feel, and it was just me. And I would talk about real men can feel depressed and suicidal, and it was just me talking to the camera lens and crying and having the nerve and the confidence that somehow that it helped me, and that releasing it to the world would help someone else. There were shows I never watched. I end record, post it. I'm never going to watch that. I'm letting it go. And I would just get tremendous feedback.
How has that helped you?
It proves to me that there's nothing I can feel that scares people away the way I somehow believed it would. There is no pain that I have felt that someone else hasn't, isn't, and is not yet going to. Right? Especially when it comes to depression. It's probably true for all humans, but I know it's true for men. No one feels as bad as I do. Right? I am alone and isolated. This disgusting feeling, this is me. But it's not. It's just a feeling. And I find me speaking out loud, my writing, my turning it into a speech, to a book, to a video, helps me process that emotion and get it out. It stops ruminating my own head. It stops being self-inflicted tales of self-destruction and becomes something beneficial because I shared it, right? Because I was open and authentic. And someone else can see that, like, wow, even if they don't resonate exactly, they're just like, wow, I could do that about my bulimia. I could do that about my addiction. Wow. Wonder if, I could show myself that much.
Nice. Nice. You continue to break barriers internally. Do you celebrate your barrier breakers, whether big or small?
I do my best at that. It's probably not as much in the moment.
Right.
It's after the fact. Like, yeah, I'm not living, I just broke a barrier. No, it's not till like, hey, I did it. Yeah, that was a big deal. I didn't realize it at the time. That's usually how I operate.
Right. Well, when was the last time you cried?
That's a good question.
Well, I thought
probably,
I'd pull it out there.
Yeah. Probably probably in October, because I cried a lot. Again, when my not having a great relationship with my dad, knowing he was dying, we all wanted him to go on. He had cancer and dementia. They're horrible on their own. Together, it was just gross. So I thought there'd be more relief and good, an exhale when he passed. But as the fall went on, and even now, I keep finding myself thinking of him more often. Oh, I got to tell my dad. Oh, I can't. Oh, I got to call. Oh, yeah, I can't. But I already couldn't, because I had those thoughts for 6 months. His last 6 months alive, I couldn't talk to him because he just wasn't all there anymore. So I mourned my dad before his physical death, and then I was surprised how much mourning there was after his physical death as well.
Yeah, I think for most men, that is one of the key moments in your life when your father passes away. And if you can't cry at that, to me, that tells me something.
Yeah.
You know, and I hope that no men have to make it the first time they cry is when their father passes away, because that is not going to be an easy moment. I hope that they've cried before that moment, because you're going to be. Go ahead. Sorry.
And so one of the times I remember, not depression induced, my dad crying at his dad's funeral, and I'm getting choked up.
It's okay.
Anyway, I can remember hugging my dad and both of us being in tears, and it was beautiful. It was just so different. So yeah, so if a guy doesn't cry until it's the death of his own dad, that just struck me as, wow, so many wasted opportunities for both of them to come together in emotion, in feeling, in sharing.
Very, very, very true. So many lost moments and opportunities. Really. And you had mentioned earlier, what are women saying about this sort of thing, about the men and the crying? You shed a little bit of light. I'd like to hear a little bit more what women are telling you about this.
Yeah, I can. If all the men came to me whose women in their lives said they should, I wouldn't have a spare moment. So it's still at the point, at least in where I am and the people I'm in circles with, more women see the benefit and the need for their men to open up, to get authentic, to open up more and share and get express their emotions than all men are yet willing to do. But it's there. Like each month, each year, I see more and more, and I think it's a great upswing on that.
So for the significant other or the other person who's in this environment where a man is finally beginning to cry, what do you suggest to them how to handle that situation?
My wife has talked about this very well, because she knows of women that, you got to share more, and then the man does, and they're like, whoa, it's like now they're surprised. So it can be overwhelming to the woman if you were always just always frowning or never saying anything, and suddenly you're confessing all these things, and you want to go roll around in the field with puppy dogs all day, and it can be just so much. So for women, I just encourage you, be ready for what you're asking for, right? And then, because when it shows up, don't you just then shut down, because now it's going to be tougher for that guy to return. So don't punish the emotion, and also realize, don't take it personally. Right? Everyone's emotions are about them, much more than the person you're dealing with. Today's call could end up in a fight, and you're a jerk, and I've never showed up here again. And it's all about me, right? It's not something that someone else did. People can be the triggers, but all the pain points, that's already within you. All the unexpressed emotion is bubbling up, waiting for something to just be noticed and be an excuse to let go. That's the big thing. But yeah, don't punish it. Welcome it. If just whatever the emotion is, just witness it. You don't have. I hear women say this a lot about men. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to say something back. Just be there. Right? To hear a man's darkest secrets, what they think are their darkest secrets, a big confession, just to stay there, hold that space. Right? You as a partner, not running away, that's the big fear.
Yes.
If I show someone who I really am, I'm going to be alone. So let them show who they are. And even if you don't like it, even if you don't understand it, just, okay, I'm still here. Right? We'll figure this out.
It's good stuff. That's strong thought process. Really, really good thought process. What kind of reaction are you having to this article?
Again, all positive. Yeah, it's good. It's getting shares, and I know the Good Project is going to republish it. And
actually, before you put out this article, did you have a thought of what sort of reaction you would get?
No, I learned long ago. I write for me.
Okay.
Right. If someone else happens to get something out of it, great.
It's a bonus.
But if I set the goal as, oh, I've got to write this to impact lives, it's false. Right. It just is.
Has this been in any way a more unique article than any of the other ones you've written? Has it been any more personal? Has it impacted? Has it had more impact in any way? At least on the front end.
Last week, I told my chiropractor, hey, you helped me come up with an article recently. I wrote about it, so I haven't heard from him yet. But yeah, it was different. That again, it was truly when I went. The article opens with me talking about I just went to the chiropractor, and literally while I'm there, I'm like, this would be a great thing to write about. So that's the things I love when I'm having the experience. Like, oh, I'm going to pay extra attention because I'm going to go home and write about this. Those are the things that I love. So it's my personal insight gets shared, and then others can recognize their own insights from it as well. That's my favorite thing to write about. But if I try to write something, I need to write something that helps someone have an insight. That just feels false to me.
Right. You don't have to give the name, but I always like to celebrate success. Can you share a moment you've been in a coaching session with a man and that first cry came out?
Oh, yeah. Last year, I had a client, and often before you start coaching someone, there's multiple conversations.
Sure.
And lots of emails, and people kind of kick your tires and want to feel you out, especially when I'm doing energy coaching, and it's not just it's different. I'll just say it like that.
Right.
So I had this guy, multiple emails. We had probably 4 conversations, and he's like, I just can't believe I'm telling you this much. You're just some stranger. I'm like, well, aren't all your best friends and family members strangers to begin with? Like,
that's right.
That's the starting point of anything.
That's right.
Yeah. So he's like, oh, I never thought of it that way. I'm like, well, that's the value of a coach, to help you think of things in a new way, right? Yeah, you have all your answers. You just need someone else to kind of shine that light and guide you. Look, it's everything we all need is within us. We just sometimes need help digging it out. But so this guy, he's shocked at how much he's telling me, and because I've talked to lots of guys, like he's really not saying anything that's blown me away. It's pretty standard challenges for a middle-aged man in career and fulfillment and meaningless and feeling connection with his wife and connecting to his kids. But it's a big deal because he's obviously never said this to anybody.
Right.
So just conversations, just me listening, asking a question and shutting up for 5 minutes was a big deal for him. So then when he finally hires me, we're 10 minutes into a 45-minute call, and just the cork is out. He is just sobbing.
Wow.
Right. We're on Skype. I'm just sitting, and he's like, I can't believe it. He just goes and sobs. And I was like, this is what you needed. Just don't stop judging it. This is great. And I put in the article, like, I don't try to feel for him. I'm like, oh no, don't cry. I never say don't cry to anybody. Like, and that's an instructional thing. It's almost like a sneeze is followed by God bless you. Someone starts crying, you say, oh, don't cry. I'm like, no, go ahead, cry, let it out. When I see a man crying, I celebrate that. Because there's someone there's someone that, they're finally letting out some of that pain. At least some of it is coming out right now. Right.
Nice.
So for like 30 minutes of our 45-minute session was just me holding space for this gentleman to cry.
Wow. Wow, that's fantastic. Well, you know what? On that note, I think we're going to end our epic conversation. And I'd first like to say thank you for taking the time out of your positive, productive schedule to share with us tonight. Thanks for being also transparent and honest, funny, insightful, full of knowledge, experience. It's appreciated, not taken for granted. If people want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
Yep. So my best website is theandygrant.com. That covers everything I'm doing, coaching, Real Men Feel, the books I've got, online classes are all there. And I'll just say that. That's the easiest thing to remember. My email is listed there as well, too. But theandygrant.com. Because you don't want just any Andy Grant. You want
the Andy Grant. Yes, you want the Andy Grant. Well, what we'll do is we'll put all that contact information when we post a replay of this epic conversation. And one of the things I always like to say when it comes to men, and a lot of people don't realize this fact, that 80% of the suicides committed in North America by people over 40 years old are by men. So as I always say, as I said earlier on, there are men out there that are screaming and nothing's coming out. Find a way, provide a safe environment, provide a comfortable environment so we don't hear screams, but I'd rather hear cries than screams.
I love that.
I just thought that I'd rather hear a cry than a scream.
Yeah.
It's Dr. Vibe here. I'm host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, home of epic conversations, a place for epic conversations. If you want to watch replays of conversations like this via YouTube, you're at the place, so I don't have to give you any more information. If you want to listen to replays of my audio epic conversations, you can go to Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Tuned In Radio, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music Store, and Tuned In Radio. You can also hear selected replays at thegoodmenproject.com. There you go. And they actually favored a tweet that I just put out about Andy and I having an epic conversation. Also at wjmsradio.com. I'm also a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching Communications. If you'd like to set up a complimentary 30-minute conversation with me, please reach out to me on Twitter at drvibeshow. Also, you can go to my website, click on the Contact Dr. Vibe Show at the top, or you can email me at dr.vibe@thedrvibeshow.com. Also know I'm a brand ambassador for the only online magazine that is dedicated to African Americans in food, wine, and travel. The name of the magazine is Cuisine Noir Magazine. Website address is cuisinenoirmagazine.com. Also, I provide a service provider of a product called gettingmediacoverage.com. So if you want to enhance your business or your entrepreneur business or anything and get more media exposure, please contact me, because what we do is we elevate your business by getting media coverage and media promotion. And then finally, you can catch me now on Friday mornings at 7:25 a.m. on Pennsylvania's only Black-owned AM/FM online station, WURD. I'm on for an hour with Christopher Flood, the drummer, Norris, and what we do is the week that was. So we pick stories from the previous week and provide commentary and thought, and people call in and give their commentary and thoughts on those news stories. So 3 last things I'd like to say. First of all, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. And sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. So I think that's a very appropriate piece to end off this with. So thanks very much for watching live on the replay. God bless, peace be well, keep the faith, and we will catch you soon. Bye-bye.